That's right, Googie. This is the end of the Mac Pro Rack saga. So let's get on with it. I got the finishing kit for the Middle Atlantic. I'm just eating dinner, and then I'm going to head over there and get this done. What do you think, Goog? Are you excited? Yeah, she's not excited because she can't go to the studio because she doesn't like car trips. Oh, well. Well, Googie doesn't give a crap, but I care because this has taken such a long time and we're right at the end of it. I thought Googie would be excited about this day, but I think she's mad at me because I recycled the Mac Pro box. Look at her. Don't you wish you could just sleep upside down like this? Look at this. So this is almost at an end and I'm so stoked. This will hold me over for 5 to 7 years and hopefully by that time I'll be retired on a beach somewhere. Ooh. Yeah. Ooh. Oh yeah. And not to worry, there's tons of airflow. There's like a big gap sucking in air from the floor. And this thing is inset almost 6 inches, so plenty of air. And I'll be checking the temperature in some of the monitoring utilities. So if it does get too hot, I'll just take the door off. But until then, looks good. Yeah. See, this thing looks way nicer than a server rack. And as a McDonald's professional, I have high standards. All right, everything's wired up, ready to go. Make sure everything works. See power. Let's turn on the monitor controller. So everything's alive and well in the rack, and it's time to fire up the computer. The one thing that drives me a little crazy about Macs made in the last 3 or 4 years is that they don't chime when they start up. And I've been conditioned over the course of 15 years of brainwashing by Apple. If you hear the chime, everything checks out and the system will boot. The chime is pretty much a post beep. And now nothing happens. So, you know, I power this thing up and it's testing 384 gigs of RAM. So it actually takes a while before the monitors fire up and it actually boots into the operating system. So it's kind of a unnerving moment every single time I power this up. Check out how long this takes. I'm looking at my monitors and nothing's happening. Oh yeah, check that out. There is a chime. Someone figured out a terminal command to turn it back on. So the chime exists once again. That just brings a sense of peace and calmness to my life. And all is well in the universe. So I'll post the terminal command and add it into your system. I don't know if it works before Catalina, but in Catalina, the terminal command turns back on the chime, and I can hear it with the built-in subwoofer in this thing, which is ridiculous. So it's a nice, bassy, big, beefy tone. Oh, look. Yeah, it's alive. Incidentally, the Mac startup chime was made on a Korg wave station, probably the keyboard version. I bet you didn't know that. So there we have it. Everything is set up. I have 3 4K screens now. I have a big Dell that I use on the side for a whole bunch of readouts and displays that I don't need to primarily look at. The middle monitor I'll be staring at all the time into the computer void is that 32-inch LG 4K. And then the other day I picked up a Samsung 58-inch 4K TV. I can't believe how cheap this tech is now. Like that top screen was $550 and it looks awesome. So there's always a compromise. And in this situation, I did have to put my center speaker sideways just because I didn't want to block the woofer. Genelex says as long as the point between the 2 drivers is centered, then you get a proper center image. I do have to shift this over to the left a little bit, but let me show you what I've done. So that Middle Atlantic cabinet is right here. On top of that, I had to make like a little board to hold the TV cart. And I actually cut down the metal because it used to come out to about this far. I'm going to cut these and then pop these caps on so it doesn't look so cheesy. Right here, I have a rack mount drawer for some like spare hard drives and like some cables, like if a client needs a phone charger or like a weird adapter or dongle. My UPS is above. And this amp here will drive these speakers here once I wire them up. The only issue now is everything's up and running. I really have to clean up the cable spaghetti, but I don't have time because I have to get back to work. So maybe, I don't know, maybe I'll have these all cleaned up by the time I do my next system upgrade. But realistically, I just need, maybe a few hours to really pull these apart and clean them up. I also have to paint this black, just stupid stuff like that. I actually have a 7U box that can cover this to beautify this setup. This is just so I could get up and going right away. But the great thing is, this is all on casters, this whole thing. So if I need to open up the Mac to change out an SSD or something, I just swing this out, open the door, slide out the rack, drop in the drive or whatever, or change a card. It doesn't really matter, whatever it is. Slide the rack back in, and I'm back to work. And I don't have to unhook a single cable, which is amazing. Again, it's a lot of cables to remove just to change a card or something. So I do have this PCIe card here from Amfeltec, and that allows me to mount 6 M2 drives. The only thing is, though, I found that the fans were loud because it's designed for normal servers, so noise is never an issue. But obviously in the studio, noise is a critical thing. So I was able to take off the fans. They said that was fine. But I found for optimal temperature, I just removed the 2 PCIe brackets on either side because they're double width. And that just pushes more air past it and keeps it cool. So the drives on it are sitting at a decent temperature. And even under load, they're not going over 60 Celsius. And I believe the dangerous temperature on these things is 79 Celsius. That's when things start to get bad. And nowhere near that, even under load. So that's great. So the good thing about this Middle Atlantic is that it is sitting sideways. So I have front and rear access here without having to move the cabinet at all. This thing is holding my UPS, my amp, my center speaker, and my 58-inch television. So this thing is robust and it's on casters, so it's easy to move. I'm really happy with this thing. Now I just have to clean this up and make it all pretty. And I also have to do the same thing over here under the desk. But I'm just going to let this breathe a little bit, maybe a week or so, just to make sure I don't run into anything weird, or if I have to do another little wiring thing. And then once I'm confident that I don't have to change anything, I'm going to get the Velcro out and make everything tidy. All this will just be one little clump going to this cabinet here instead of all this, mess here. So it'll sort of look more like this versus this. So anyway, just as a side note. There we go. I mean, this saga is complete for the most part, aside from getting these hooked up and cleaning up some wires and stuff. So far, I've tested out everything. Logic's working. Vienna Ensemble Pro is working with its own audio hardware. So the idea is all this stuff feeds into Logic through a specific set of digital inputs, and they all get routed into the orchestra template here. All this stuff feeds into various busing and reverbs and all that stuff. At all times, it's double bust. So all this stuff is going up to Pro Tools. So if I'm done my cue, I can just hit play, and then Pro Tools will automatically kick into record, and all the individual elements go to where they have to go, including all the demos and the sub mixes. So all the stuff gets laid in on the fly. So I can go anywhere into Logic. Let's say this is another cue here. I can hit play, and then Pro Tools will kick into record automatically. So everything is working. I am so happy, and there is so much less gear now to accomplish this task. And also because there's less gear, there's no system noise. So like this is as loud as my studio gets. Like now I can hear the self noise from the speakers, and that's actually bothering me. Whereas before it was like a whole bunch of fans and AVID gear that was all noisy. So yeah, my main compromise is the center speaker is slightly blocked, but thankfully the turn-off will compensate for this. The reason I can't go any higher is because the TV can't go any higher or I'll hit the ceiling. So that's not a good idea. And I need a little bit of clearance, so if I ever need to swing this out, it's not going to scrape against the ceiling or hit those wood pieces there. Just little things, but it's 99% where I want it, and that's totally fine. So the AVID Matrix has changed my life. It has all my DACs, it has all the routing between Logic and Pro Tools, and the outboard gear and everything. It's just so much simpler now. If there's any overlapping tasks on the same day, I can instantly completely reconfigure my studio on the fly. Whereas before I might have had to go under my desk and rewire something. So it's really as efficient as it can get in March of 2020. this will do everything I need to do with no compromise. This is finished. Yeah! So on a complete side note, I knew this would happen. I constantly forget to turn off this keyboard because it's a permanent install and it's a Bluetooth wireless keyboard. Like, what the hell, Apple? Now it's kind of cheesy versus the old one because the old one, the wire was underneath the keyboard, so you wouldn't even see it if it was wired in. And I have this little sneaky hole under here to hide the cable. But now this has the connector on the back, so if I want it permanently wired, I have a cable sticking out. And this just looks so much better with no wire. Oh, Apple, why do you make these decisions? I'll never understand. I always wonder what Apple does behind closed doors at some of these meetings. Like, are they sitting there at like 11 p.m. going, what can we do to piss off the user experience? Next, we will make the wire visible so the user will have to use Bluetooth. Ugh. But it's just one of those things where the older version of this was better. But this keyboard looks so much cooler. Oh man, it's a catch-22. Oh, I just have to remember to turn off my keyboard. Maybe I'll have to leave a little post-it note right here saying, turn off the keyboard, you Apple dummy. So yeah, I mean, the journey has been a complicated one, sorting out the logistics of all this. Now that everything's done and I have all the cards on the computer, which would be almost impossible to do with any other system because there's 8 PCIe slots and a lot of them are double width. The case can accommodate all that. All the complicated stuff is inside the computer. And the only thing connected on the outside from the computer is one 2-meter active Thunderbolt 3 cable going to this CalDigit dock on the floor. That's driving this screen. And it's also connected to the Blackmagic here. So I can easily access client drives and backups without having to climb under the desk or open up the Mac Pro cabinet. So it's everything's just really simplified, which I really like. And eventually I will clean up this disaster zone under the desk. For now, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to feel this out for maybe a few weeks and make sure there's no surprise issues. I've always found that the moment you clean up cables prematurely is the moment you have to unravel them all to fix the problem. So I'm just going to wait. What else? The computer actually ended up costing more because factor in the RAM, which was an extra $3,000. I bought some M2 drives. I bought 4 Samsung 970s. So that was another $2,000. So all these things sort of stacked up, but I'm in it for the long term. So I won't have to do this for a long time. I'm really happy with the Amfeltec 6M2 carrier board. I was able to take off the fans. And I had to up the fan speed of the Mac Pro slightly, but it's still so quiet I can't hear it. And the temperatures so far look okay. I mean, under load, I think the max thermal limit for these things is 79 Celsius. These are all sitting around high 50s, which is okay. I mean, I can up the fans even more if I really wanted to. But so far, so good. I haven't had anything flaky. I also found because the Mac Pro had some gaps between the PCIe cards, I took out the PCIe brackets on either side of the Amfeltec, and that cooled it down significantly because the PCI Express controller gets really hot. So now there's more airflow and everything's great. So it's just these little nitpicky things that I wasn't expecting when I initially started this journey. So luckily I was able to get this all done within my time frame. One of the shows I'm composing on kicks in about 2 weeks, so I had to get this done. And of course, there was delays with some shipping and, you know, the odds and ends getting them in from like online orders. But I'm all set up. And the only thing I'm waiting on now is AVID to fix the Pro Tools video problem. But for now, as of March 2020, I'm using VideoSlave to solve that problem. And if I have to do any multi-lane video conforms, I can use my laptop and then bring it back into Pro Tools here. So there's always a workaround. Sometimes you just gotta work it. And there you go. So here we are. We're at the end of the Mac Pro Rack journey, and I can't thank everybody enough for following along and communicating. It's been interesting, to say the least. It took longer than I thought. It cost more than I thought. There was way more troll interaction than I thought. And honestly, at the end, I didn't think a McDonald's professional could pull this off, but here we are. On the plus, I've met and talked to a ton of great people around the world, and I've made some new friends and made some connections. It's been awesome, and onward on the journey. Now that the technical stuff is done, now I can get back to work making music, and I can get back into what I promised all along, which was some workflow videos based on the kind of work I do. And that's writing music for cartoons. I do a lot of technical assist for film composers. So it's like the Pro Tools, the preparation for soundtrack recordings with orchestras. I do a lot of synth work for movies and television. And I also do a lot of music editorial. And I also have a cat who's really loud, and there's no ISO booth that can contain her. So until next time, please leave some comments if you have any questions or what you want to see, and hopefully I can accommodate and make some videos for everybody so we can keep sharing information and learning about the tech and about music production and creation. We'll just see where this takes us. All right, have a good evening. See you later. From a McDonald's professional. Bye.